Hi, my name's Ellie Greeny and I'm the Commercial Director at Transition Partners. We're a tech recruitment consultancy with an office in Leeds covering the UK market and an office based in Berlin. I've worked within tech for the past 5 years and find the market fascinating. I'm really passionate about helping women not only get in tech, but really advance their career with an exciting industry that can provide endless opportunities. I love networking and finding out about other people's stories. I decided to set up the Journey of a Woman in Tech to share knowledge, wisdom, and hopefully have a laugh along the way. Feel free to get in touch on LinkedIn to see how you can get involved. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to the Journey of a Woman in Tech. So today we've got a lovely guest on the show. We've got Hannah Pretswell, who's Senior Test Engineer at Scott Logic. Hannah started her career in character animation and had a short stint working in games. She then taught herself how to code and moved into the world of quality and testing. She is co-organizer of the Ministry of Testing Newcastle and is passionate about the testing community. Hello, Hannah.
Hi.
So glad to have you on the podcast. We've been speaking for weeks on email, but we just didn't manage to book it in. But so glad we finally got you on the show today. So how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not bad.
You all right? How are you getting on in lockdown?
Usual. Oh, yeah, I can't wait to get back to the office.
Really? I think when you work in consultancy as well, like Scott Logic, you kind of do feel you're in a people-focused environment, aren't you? Working with your clients, and I can imagine it's a little bit difficult.
Yeah. It's just so like boring now. I work at my desk that I'm sitting at right now, and then I also play like video games here. I do all like my hobbies. I do my knitting and my crochet, and I watch like movies and stuff. It's all at this one desk. So
we hardly move anymore, do we? I was thinking that earlier today. I was like, I need to get out of the house this afternoon because I haven't been out in probably 24 hours, and you've just got to keep getting yourself moving, haven't you? So let's start then the podcast by talking about your current role, what you're up to at Scott Logic.
Yeah, so I mean, as you said, like I'm a software tester, currently sort of specializing, I guess, in more of like a manual role. I haven't really done much automation for a while. My current role is really interesting. I've got quite a lot of a focus on like improving testing over like a bunch of teams. So we're currently working in like a kind of a safe, a scaled agile framework kind of way. And I think it does have quite a few issues in general using like the safe framework, because you've got so many teams all working on this one code repo, and you can end up with like a lot of dependencies and a lot of people like stepping on each other's feet, and it can get quite tangled. So it's really interesting like looking at all these teams working together from a bit of an outside perspective. And
so your job is to like look at the quality of the overall piece then?
In a way, yeah. I mean, I'm also working on a few of the teams to help out with testing there. But yeah, it's so nice to have like a bit of an overview of how things are going. It's kind of, it's not my usual role. Like normally I would just be, a tester on a team, but it's a little bit of like sort of a new thing that I'm doing. And it sounds
really like a good fun. Promotion. A good step up. So you're a consultant then. Tell me about Scott Logic and what you're up to.
Yeah, so I guess we work for, I mean, do you want to know like about Scott Logic?
Yeah, company? I think it'd be good to give people a bit of context about the consultancy.
Yeah, so we work for a bunch of different clients, ranging from like financial institutions to sort of the public sector as well. We offer like a range of services, I guess. So you can either hire like a team where we will build a product from scratch for you, and we will deliver it, and we will do all of that. We'll have developers, testers, product owners, and sort of client managers and things like that, all in one kind of bundle. But then we can also like give you a developer if you need sort of a bit of help on delivering something. Maybe you don't have enough people and you just need a little bit extra. We also we do that as well.
That's awesome. That's cool. So you get loads of exposure to different projects and different environments and people, which is great.
That's what I really love about it, actually, is like it's kind of hard to get bored when you have like a new project every 6 months to 2 years.
That's good,
I think it's like the perfect kind of timeline. So yeah, I've been at Schoologic for like 6 years now.
Yeah, I know, you've been there a long time.
Yeah, I basically started my career here. So
well, let's go back to that then. Let's talk about your story and how you got into tech.
Yeah, bit of an interesting sort of path into it, not the usual kind of computer science at uni. Yeah, when I guess I'm trying to think when to start. So I've always been interested in like science and maths and all that kind of technical-ish STEM kind of subjects.
When you're at school?
Yeah, when I was at school. So when I did my A-levels, I thought I was going to go into like physics or something when I left school. But then I changed my mind during my AS levels and I was like, no, I want to do music. I'm going to go to college and study music. So I decided to stop trying and basically like failed maths.
Oh gosh.
Because I was like, I'm just going to quit. It doesn't matter. I don't care about what A levels I get now. I'm going to go to college and do music. And then
do you play an instrument or?
I play piano, and guitar.
Cool.
So not very well anymore, but I do on occasion still. But yeah, then I changed my mind again and I was like, no, I'm going to do astrophysics when I leave school. Wow. So I had to retake all of like maths and stuff in my second year of A levels, which was exhausting.
That wasn't much fun. Yeah. And you're going from like saying, I'm not going to do any of it, I'm not going to bother. But when you go to A levels, it's like a completely different level anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the step up from GCSE. So when you're behind on that to then have to take something, look towards something like astrophysics, that must have felt like a huge kind of like, that's a hell of a big step, isn't it?
Oh, it was, yeah. I don't really know what I was thinking back then, but yeah, even just like the step up from GCSE to A level, it's quite a big jump. And I struggled a lot in my second year of A levels. Like I went through probably every single past paper that you could get my hands on for maths and just practiced them over and over and over again and did all of them.
Wow, that's one hell of a commitment. That's where I take my hat off to you, Hannah, because that's when I quit. I left school then and was like, you know what, I don't think it's for me anymore.
Well, the thing is, like, after I'd done my exams and stuff, I then was like, oh, I don't think I'm clever enough to go and do physics at uni.
So you put yourself all through that. What did you graduate from college with then?
I got 3 Bs. I got a B in
that's great.
Physics, a B in maths, and a B in RE.
And then at that point you said you didn't think you were good enough.
Yeah. But the thing is, I've always loved art. So I was like, well, I kind of want to do art at uni. So I took a year out. I just worked for a year in the town that like I grew up in.
Where's that? Where are you from?
So technically I'm from Newcastle. I lived in Newcastle till I was like 10 and then we moved to the Lake District.
Oh, lovely. What a nice place to grow up.
Oh, it's brilliant. And it was so good as well for like being a teenager because there's so many summer jobs. So during my like gap year type thing, I had no problems finding like a job. I worked in a museum for like all the holidays and it was really, really good fun. But yeah, in that time I was like, okay, I'm going to do animation at uni. So that's how I ended up doing animation at university instead of everything else I was thinking of maybe doing.
So it took a few ideas then to know what you thought you wanted to do. But actually the reality is you ended up doing something completely different anyway. So you studied character animation then?
Yeah.
What happened when you graduated?
I was freelance for a little while.
Okay.
And I hated it.
Did you work on any like really cool projects that we'd know?
No, not anything that you'd know. I did some work for my friend's game, but that's pretty much it. It was just all like little bits and bobs, little bits of graphic design here and there. But no, I really, really hated it. I spent more time trying to find business than actually doing art. And then I found that because I was doing art for money, I just really didn't like it. Like, it took all enjoyment out of the hobby for me. So
I think a lot of people who work in the creative space find that, don't they, fairly early on, that what you think you want to do because you're passionate about it, longer term, you think, actually, I'd rather keep it as a hobby and be able to enjoy it in my own time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's amazing when I see people who can actually, you know, put that much kind of commitment into something that's a hobby and is their career as well. I'm just like, wow, it's so impressive. Like, I wish I had that level of focus, but I'm very much like, I'm all over the place with everything that I enjoy. I can never focus on one thing.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of hobbies.
Yeah.
So then how did you get into coding?
So I moved to Newcastle, or back to Newcastle, after I'd done my degree, and I was living with someone that I knew from back home. So she'd gone to the same uni as me. She just graduated like a year or two earlier, and she had a spare room. So I was like, oh, I'll move in with you. And she worked at a games company, like a local games company, and they were actually looking for QA, so testers at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I don't know much about QA. Like, I guess working in the games industry will be good, because then I can get my foot in the door and potentially work my way up into getting an art role when I'm there. So I thought, yeah, I'll apply for it. It'll be fine. And somehow managed to wrangle my way into like the role. I think there was like 5 or 6 positions, and they interviewed so many people.
Wow.
Like, it's really competitive. I think I was quite lucky in that my housemate worked there, so she actually had some of the games that they'd made in the house, so I got to play some of them prior, and I actually found a bug.
Oh, right.
One of their games.
Really?
So in the interview, I was like, by the way, do you know that there's this bug in your game?
Oh, that's good then, isn't it? You've done your research.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That could have gone down one way or the other.
Like, I know. I was like, I've got to take a chance here.
You were interviewing the test manager, and he was like, what? You just embarrassed me in front of the CEO about this.
It's like, it's worth the risk, I'll be fine.
Did you start off in manual testing then?
Yes, yeah. So it was pretty much at the end of like this game's kind of development life cycle. So we were brought in as like a bit of a last minute, like, we need to test this thing before it goes out. And it had a lot of multiplayer sort of aspect to it. So that's why they needed quite a few people, was to test the multiplayer side. So yeah, it was all very much manual. I didn't know anything about code. And I think during that role, I just kind of realized that testing was really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. I loved like exploring and working with people to find out what the problem was, and occasionally being able to go to a developer and be like, haha, you were wrong. This bug was actually in your section. You need to fix it now. But yeah, I didn't really get along too well with the games industry at the time, in the sense of quite low paying for the QA testers back then. And
I feel like games generally is quite like that anyway, though, because it's like quite a lot of industries, when it's something that you really love or that you're passionate about, they never pay as well in it. It's like, it's like anything. It's like fashion. Fashion's really similar. Lots of people, in fact, most people in fashion don't get paid very well at all, but mainly people want to work in those industries because they love it, and they end up like this. It's just, it's crazy, isn't it? And gaming's very similar to that.
I think it's such a shame, because it's just exploiting these people's passions. And it's like, no, you should be rewarding them for being so passionate, not exploiting them.
I agree with that 100%. So, and how long were you working for that company before you joined Scott Logic?
Like 6 months. It wasn't very long.
Okay.
So yeah.
And how did Scott Logic come around?
Well, yeah, I decided relatively early on, I guess, that I wanted to work in in testing, but not in games. So that's when I started researching, like, okay, what do I need to know? Okay, I need to know some basic coding. I need to, I started off looking at like the ISTQB qualifications and things. Never got around to doing those because of Scott Logic, basically. But yeah, I was sending off my email, my CV to pretty much everything I could find. Just hoping that someone would get back to me and be like, yeah, we'll take a chance on you. Someone who has no no related qualifications and like no actual experience in the industry.
Do you know what? It's quite unusual that I guess the next role you got with the background that you had, although it's like a really diverse experience, really interesting, quite often consultancies would say no to a background like that, because usually when consultancies hire, they do hire like the best of the best, like they would like safe hires, like really like the CVs that consultancies usually go for are more like really well experienced, senior lead level, been doing it time and time again because they're trusted to work on client sites. So how comes you think how did you manage to get your foot in the door with a consultancy?
So I think that's something that Scott Logic does really well, actually, is that we look for kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's like attitudes in a way, rather than qualifications. Like, yeah, obviously, you know, when you put a CV down in front of a client, they're probably going to want someone who's got, you know, a first in like computer science. But the thing is, you know, Scott Logic has this really good reputation of always having like having some of the best people, and they're not necessarily from the background that you expect. So because we've got this really good sort of reputation and repertoire with clients, they trust us and they know what work we've done. So I think that's probably one of the reasons, is that it's quite a well-established company amongst a lot of the clients that we have.
I think I guess the market reputation exceeds itself, doesn't it? And then they're able to trust people because of that, which is awesome. So when you first joined Scott Logic, then did you have a lot of upskilling to do to kind of be ready for client-facing roles?
I was terrified. So actually in my interview, or in one of my interviews, I was asked, like, how would you feel if you put on a client project straight away? And I was like, I'd be terrified.
So you were really honest.
Yeah. And they were like, how would you handle it? And I was like, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I would ask lots of questions. I would hope that there'd be someone there helping me. And they're like, it's not going to happen. Don't worry. You would have some time to, like, you know, to do some training, and you wouldn't get put on a client project straight away. And literally the day that I started, I got taken over to my desk and like, this is your team. This is the project that you're going to be on. And I was like, what? I'm going to be on a project? Oh my God. But it was really, really good. I did have about a month where I was kind of like working for the client, but not quite. It was kind of like a transition period. Yeah. So I did have a month of time to learn things, but yeah, it was terrifying, but really, really exciting as well. I do like being dropped in at the deep end for a lot of things. And it forces you to kind of to pick up things quickly and to learn. And I do like that kind of, I like that rush.
Being pushed outside your comfort zone. It's a good thing, isn't it? And that is where you do all your personal and professional growth, isn't it? When you're pushed out your comfort zone. So I completely agree with that. So by that point, had you learned how to automate, or was that something that came?
I spent that month kind of teaching myself, kind of doing work and like kind of teaching myself, but with the aid of all the people around me. So it wasn't fully kind of teaching myself. I guess self-learning, that's kind of what you'd want to call it. So yeah, I could do basic automation by the time I started, but I did probably most of my learning how to do automation was on the project itself.
Yeah.
When you get like the real world examples and you're like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this, and you sit down and you work with a developer and they kind of talk you through, I think that's when I learned the most.
Yeah, that sounds like it's a really good opportunity to do that. Tell me about the Ministry of Testing then in Newcastle and your involvement with that.
Yeah, so I guess we haven't actually done anything for about a year now.
Yeah, for
obvious reasons. But yeah, that was really, really fun to set up, and I miss it a lot. It was one of the things that I missed the most when I actually moved back. Well, when I moved down to London, was that whole community. But yeah, we had a testing meetup in Newcastle, ran by someone else, but it was relatively infrequent. And I think because it was so infrequent, I kept forgetting to go. Like, I need like a routine.
Yeah.
And I was at a conference, a test bash conference, and some people had been talking about setting up like a Ministry of Testing meetup, like in sort of different cities. And I was like, that sounds like a really good idea for Newcastle. And it turned out that someone else in Newcastle from a different company called Sage had also had the same idea. So we got in contact and we basically like got a team together of people who could help us set up this meetup. And we spoke to the guy who was running the other one. We were like, are you okay if we do this? Like, we don't want to.
Was that the Ministry of Testing Manchester then, or the one in Leeds? Where did it start?
Like Ministry of Testing, like the meetups. I'm not,
because I felt like there was the one in Manchester's been going for a long time.
Oh yeah, there's ones like all over the country. I'm not actually sure where it started, to be honest. I can't remember the origin story of Ministry of Testing. But
it's cool though that you helped bring it up to Newcastle. And when, obviously you haven't had any events in a while, but your last events that you had, what kind of size was it? What kind of turnout did you get?
I think we could get up to like 25 people.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. But I think you'd normally be looking at like 15 to 20. Yeah,
that's awesome. And also just provides you with a community of peers that you can kind of lean on if you're not sure, if you come across anything you didn't know, and being able to share that. I think people that are in a test to be in testing to be able to support on the community like that's really advantageous, isn't it? And I feel like testing is one of those things. There's obviously quite a big divide. I mean, from a recruitment perspective, I often find there's quite a big divide between sort of like manual or automation and people that want the opportunity to get into automation, but they're stuck in manual roles and they don't get the exposure and opportunity. Have you got any advice for anyone that's in that position at the moment?
Oh gosh,
it's throwing you off there, but I know when people usually ask me, I say, perhaps I start on one of the junior coding courses and try and get a mentor, and try and gain exposure that way. But I didn't know if you might have any more ideas that would help.
So I guess, yeah, I like. I guess it depends on what kind of level you're at. Like if you already know some coding and you want to get into automation, if you're relatively comfortable with code and your company is not like letting you progress in that way, then honestly, I would probably say start looking elsewhere, unfortunately. But if you don't know how to code and you want to learn, there's some really, really good resources out there. So I really like Code Academy. I find like the bite-sized lessons are just really nice to do. I also really like, and I'm currently doing this with a friend, there's a course called CS50.
Okay, I haven't heard of it before.
Yeah, it's a Harvard computer science course, but it's like one term, and they have it for free online.
Oh, cool.
You can pay to get the certificate at the end if you want to, but yeah, it's all free. You learn C. So it goes into like the really, really basics of things and really nitty gritty, and it's really, really difficult. I'm really struggling. But it is,
and it's hard because it's not like you'll use C on the day to day, is it? It's not like
you don't get much time to practice.
Or Java. If it was something like that, then you'd probably find that you start seeing bits at work and then start using it. But it's not really a language that many people use anymore, is it really?
but it does, I think it helps kind of cement some of like the foundational knowledge, which
100%.
is useful. And then there's also something called Test Automation University.
Oh, cool.
I can't remember who that's run by, but
yeah,
that is, again, loads of free resources on there where you can learn different automation tools, and it's free. And I got kind of addicted to just doing the tasks
for fun.
Because it's like you get like badges for everything that you complete. So I was like,
cool.
I
It's
had
like
so much fun, like,
brownies.
trying to get all the badges. I was like, it's like a
that's
game.
Really cool. I think that's really good. Like, good to have those resources. So, what challenges do you feel that you face then as a woman in tech?
See, that was one of the questions. I was like, this is really difficult for me to sort of to think about. Because I don't feel like I've personally had too many challenges.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's amazing.
I know.
That's what we want
really
more of.
Lucky.
What do you think then, I guess, the challenges for the next generation of women in tech will be, and what can we do to help encourage them?
So I guess I kind of think it's a lot of these challenges that we talk about as like women in tech. I think a lot of it's just women in the workplace challenges rather than tech specific. So like it's all the things like, if you want to have children, like you're going to have to take like a year off of work for sort of maternity leave, and then in that year, are you going to be able to keep up with like how fast technology is changing? Like, are you going to be able to keep ahead of it, or are you then going to come back to work after that year and be kind of left behind, like
outdated? I can imagine if you're in a real techie position, like particularly like tests, for example, the amount of new tools that come out every year and new things that can be used. You like, before you know it, you are a bit outdated. So it's really important. But then also, when you're on your maternity leave, you need to be enjoying your maternity leave with your family. That's what
I know. It's and that's why I think it's not just like, it's not just tech related. I think it is. There's a lot of things that women have to face, that it's just the workplace in general.
And it's just us by design, isn't it? Like, females in general just have to go through so many more different things than men, like just the nature of our bodies and how we're built and designed. It's just crazy, isn't it? To feel like we have to kind of go through all of this and carry on work and still turn up to the office with a smile on our face.
I know. Definitely experiencing that at the moment with all the stomach cramps and the joys.
Do you know what, it's so tough, isn't it? And I think like that's the thing, what's difficult is, like you say, we go through anxiety every month. We've got cramps and PMT, for example, and it's sometimes things like that, they are really uncontrollable and they are intense, and then having to manage that once a month is just really challenging, isn't it? So I think, definitely being able to support women and having, I guess, people in the workplace that you can talk to and share experiences is really helpful, I think, in those situations.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think's been your greatest achievement to date? This is your life.
Difficult.
I mean, you're only super young as well, Hannah, so it's hard to say, isn't it?
I mean, to be honest, like I think public speaking. I spoke at a conference, the Leeds Test Atelier, a couple years ago.
Down at Sky, was it Sky? Was it the Docks? Was it the one that Gwen's put together?
Yes, yeah.
At the Royal Armouries, wasn't it?
Near there. I can't remember what the name of the place was, but I'm like terrified of public speaking, and I just everything about it just makes me feel like I'm gonna like vomit or something. Like, I'm really nervous.
And how many people did you speak in front of?
Oh gosh, I can't remember now. There's in my head there was like millions.
Of people.
There was probably only like 40 or something. I don't think it was
still
too
a
many.
lot. I actually think you're speaking in front of like 5 people is sometimes worse than like 50 or 500. Like, the smaller the group, sometimes more intense it feels.
Oh yeah. I did theatre for a little bit, like really short time doing theatre, and I did a play that was a set of monologues. So I did one monologue, and it was in a like part of the theatre called the Studio, so it's really, really small and really close to the audience. And it was just, you could see everyone's eyes and they were all watching you, and you're doing this monologue, and it's like you try and find one person to like to deliver it to, and it was just it was terrifying.
At least gave you a bit of practice. What did you speak at the Atelier? What was your topic?
So I actually talked about sleep.
Oh really?
Yeah. So yeah, I have this thing where like I will read books and then I become obsessed with the topic for a little while, and I talk the ear off anyone who will like listen to me about this thing. So I was like, you know what, maybe I should convert this into like a bit of a talk, and then maybe I'll get it out of my system a little bit quicker.
So what did you speak about to do with sleep?
It was just kind of about how it affects us and how it affects our ability to like learn and I guess stay ahead of things in technology, because a lot of technology, a lot of being in this industry is about keeping ahead of things and learning stuff and always kind of you know, like being ahead of the curve in a way, like you want to try and being able, because it's like that, what's that saying, like if you're not moving, you're falling behind, or if you're standing still, you're falling behind. It's like that kind of feels like that in tech quite often.
So it was more about like a well-being perspective then that you were talking about, rather than technical.
Yeah, because I never realized how important sleep actually is. I struggle with sleep a lot. Like,
do you?
Yeah, I struggle to get to sleep. I find that nighttime, when it's all quiet, is when all the thoughts come in, and it's just like blah, 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 in my head, and I can't switch off. And it was just really interesting reading, like, you know, if you want to learn, if you want to be sort of the best that you can be in like your daytime, you need to get the best sleep that you can get.
What's optimal hours then? Because you always feel different, don't you? Some people say like 7, some people say 9.
It depends on the person. I think they recommend 7 to 9 hours, but it kind of depends on how you feel. So like if you wake up and you feel rested, then however long that was is probably like the optimal time for you. So some people can sleep for like 6 hours and they feel fine, and it has no detrimental effect on them. But other people need 9 hours.
I think I'm one of the 9-hour people. I've got a puppy at the minute as well, and he gets me up all through the night, and it's like, because when you're someone that likes a lot of sleep as well, it's hard work, isn't it? But I guess it's practice for motherhood at some point. You'll never get sleep again. But yeah, it's so important, isn't it, for your health and well-being? On that point, what do you do as well to look after yourself from a health and well-being perspective? Have you got any tips that you might be able to share with our listeners?
As really difficult to talk about at the moment, actually, because I'm struggling a lot with like the sort of well-being and mental health thing at the moment. I've been
lockdown.
Because of lockdown.
It's hard to speak about being yourself, best self, when you're not feeling 100%. Isn't it?
And I always feel like I can give advice, but taking it is always so much more difficult. But no, I try to do exercise, at least one thing every day. Even if it doesn't take me out the house, I try and do like some kind of like stretching, or I do pole fitness. So I have a pole.
Wow, you have to be so fit to do that, don't you? Strong. Wow.
And I really enjoy that. It kind of takes my mind off everything, because I find with pole, like when you're hanging upside down using like just a leg to hang on, like if your mind isn't focused on that thing, you go fall. So it's like a weird kind of meditation in a way.
I can imagine. Like you have to be really present, don't you?
So I find that's really useful. So exercise, eating well is another one that I'm like, I know is really important, but I really struggle to do at the moment. I find it's just because I'm kind of stressed all the time with, you know, with like the pandemic and just life in general. I find that I have less and less energy to actually cook. And I end up just relying on like, you know, cup of soups and things to get me through, which is not great enough.
So it's so hard at the moment though, isn't it? Like every day is just like it's got its own different struggle, hasn't it? And if you're used to being around people, did you say you've moved to London now then? Are you in the London office now?
No, I'm in Newcastle. I moved to London at the start of February 2020.
Okay.
And was in the London office until I think September, and then I moved back up to Newcastle.
Was that just for a project then that you moved down there?
Well, I moved down there permanently, but then the test department in London, unfortunately, like was struggling to find work at the time, so I moved back up to Newcastle. And but I'm so happy to be back up in Newcastle.
I love Newcastle as well. It's such a great city.
All my friends are here. I did have a few friends down in London, but they all scarpered as soon as lockdown hit, and I was like, I'm all alone.
Left on your own. Yeah, a lot of people went back home, didn't they? I feel like I just love recruiting in Newcastle as well, because all the candidates are always so friendly and so happy to talk to you. It's very different to like recruiting in London. I find like everyone in Newcastle just wants to have a good chat, and it's just so amazing to get to speak to people. So the community is definitely really warm and welcoming, which I'm sure made your Ministry of Testing probably one of the best ones. Just in general, you probably had such nice people.
Yeah, I do love, like, I do feel like it, I know it's a stereotype, but I do feel like Northerners are just so much more friendly.
Northern hospitality, you can't beat it, can you?
I can't tell if it's the accent or if it's the people.
Yeah, I think it's the people, isn't it? They're just really warm-hearted. What about role models for you? Who's been a great role model for you?
It's just all the difficult questions.
Sorry.
This is one I actually had to talk to my friends about, because I was like, I'm really struggling with this. Like, I don't know. But I think I've got a few role models. So I think it's just that there's just people that there's not one person that I like just look up to. There's like multiple people for multiple different reasons. So I have a few friends in like the test community that I really look up to. So there's someone that I worked with down in London, Elizabeth. I really, really look up to her as like a role model. So I'm quite shy, and sometimes I get scared about putting my point across and like saying, no, I think this, we should do this, because I know that I'm right, but sometimes I get nervous that what if I'm wrong? And she was always very, very outspoken, and she was very good at like saying what she thought and sticking to it. And if she was wrong, she was very gracious about being like, oh, okay, fair enough. That happened.
I like the sound of Elizabeth. I like that. It's a good approach, isn't it?
But like,
okay. You're wrong.
Because one of my fears is like, oh, if I'm wrong, then it's like the world has ended. I don't know. It's really, really weird. It's
and that's tough, isn't it? Particularly when you work in testing, you do actually have to be quite outspoken, because you are going to have to challenge stakeholders quite often, and quite often there'll be people that you work really closely with, and they might not want to hear what you've got to say. And I can imagine that's quite tough.
Yeah, so whenever I'm in that situation where I'm like, I know I'm right, but people are not listening to me, I will be like, I'm going to channel Elizabeth.
Yeah, you can.
What would Elizabeth do?
That's good. I like it.
And there's someone else who, again, I used to work with. She's called Rosie, and she's not actually in testing anymore. She's a developer now.
Oh, cool.
And she's self-taught with pretty much everything that she's done. She doesn't have a degree, and she worked at Scott Logic alongside me for a couple of years, and then moved on to like a developer role. She taught herself like Go, and
cool.
She's just, I'm just like, whenever I kind of feel like, oh, I can't do this, I'm like, silly things like maybe I'm getting too old to teach myself things. or like I'm like, oh, I can't bother to do it now, I'll do it later. I'm like, well, no, like I remember from observing Rosie and like working with her and talking to her, and she was always super encouraging, and she was always like, she just somehow had this like boundless energy to work on all this sort of stuff, all this learning, and she was very good at like self-improvement, and I just found it really, really inspiring. And
that's really good.
When I think of that stuff, I remember working with her, and that attitude, and I think it's a great attitude.
I think it's a great attitude to have, particularly in tech, isn't it? And good for her, going out of her comfort zone to learn new things and create a career for herself.
Yeah,
She's like learn it all herself. That's awesome.
It's so inspiring.
What words of wisdom would you give your younger self? So maybe let's think about when you were first going in for that interview at Scott Logic or something like that, and you were probably doubting yourself quite a lot. What words of wisdom would you give yourself now?
Oh gosh. For that first interview, I don't know, because I feel like I actually agree with my attitude when I went into that interview. I didn't think that I was going to get the job, but I also was looking at the interview as an opportunity. So I was like, okay, I'm going in for this interview. I don't think I'm going to get the job, but I'm going to ask as many questions as possible, because obviously I don't know anything about software testing, only stuff that I've read online. So at the end of the interview, I was like, when you get to ask questions, I was like, okay, can you help me? Basically, can you help me become a software tester? And I think that was the right thing to do. So I don't know if I'd have any extra kind of words of advice for myself then. I think for myself as like a teenager though, I would tell myself to not get too hung up on doing the right thing at like university, or like at A-levels or afterwards either. I think it's so difficult, and I think a lot of people at school struggle with that still. I think as so well too.
I agree.
There's so many options, and especially if you're someone like me where you enjoy everything, it's so difficult to choose. And
there's a stupid thing, isn't there, that if you think back to now, when you were like 16 and you were finishing at school doing GCSEs, that you had to make a decision on the rest of your life back then, and it's just absurd, isn't it? Like now think about that and you think how much pressure and stress you put yourself under trying to find this career that you had to be in for the next 40 years, and it's all just well, isn't it? Like, it's absolute rubbish. But really, you just need to, and you're a really good example of that. Like, you've tried different stuff and you found out what you love, which is incredible. Like, probably by the age of like 25, you tried 4 different careers or something. Right? You tried different things, but that's so awesome, because now you found what you love and you've been doing it 6-7 years now. And you're becoming a role model for young people in similar situations. And I think it's really important that we discuss that and we talk about it, because we are constantly, particularly females as well, we change our careers aren't linear, it changes all the time, more than our male counterparts. But in general, like, you don't have to do the same thing. If you're doing something at 40 or 50 and you're unhappy, like, retrain. There's still so much opportunity. Why spend the last 5 years of your career doing something you're not happy with? So I think it's really important. I love that. And I loved kind of your approach to your interview, that you went in, that you'll learn something, because that's something that I try and say to people all the time, that like, this interview is literally just a conversation. It's a conversation between 2 people. We put these interviewers on this huge pedestal. I don't know why, but we do. And then you go there and it's an opportunity for you to find out, it's a bit of networking. You're going to meet someone that you wouldn't have a chance to normally meet. You can ask them loads of questions to a professional, and you can get feedback and you'll learn from it. And you'll come away, and if you don't get the job, you're going to learn something about yourself that you need to work on. And then you've got to take Rosie's approach to that, haven't you, and go out and learn it or develop if you really want that, and you'll go back. And just because you've applied to a job and maybe not got it in the first application, when there's another role in 6 months' time, which there will be, because we work in tech and they're always hiring, then there is an opportunity to come back and say, look, this is what I've learned in that time and I'm really keen. So I think having that attitude is super important. So yeah, I 100% agree with that, and a lot of stuff you've said today definitely resonates with me. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, Hannah. If anyone does want to reach out and message you, what's the best form of contact?
Ooh.
Are you on Twitter or LinkedIn?
Probably LinkedIn. I don't really go on Twitter. It's too much information, and I scroll for too long, so I tend to avoid it. No, LinkedIn's probably the best one, because I'll get an email. So
perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been fantastic hearing your story today.
Thank you so much for having me.
See you later.
All right, thanks. Bye.